Okay, so now we're back with part two. This part's going to be a little bit shorter. By 1945, when the Holocaust ended, all of the Nazi leaders that they could find were tried for their crimes, and they were tried in the 1945 Nuremberg trials. They lasted 11 months, and they were the first war crimes trial ever. Lawyers and judges from Britain, from France, the Soviet Union, and the U.S. Were at the trials. And the Nazis were tried for crimes against peace, which would be plan, preparing, and starting a war crimes, murders, and deportations, and then crimes against humanity, which were murders based on political, racial, or religious grounds. All 21 of the leaders that were on trial pled not guilty, and a common defense for them was that they were just following orders. They were just doing what they were told to do, and the court had no jurisdiction over them. Some of the Nazi defendants were Hermann Göring, he was second in command. Rudolf Hess was third in command. Joachim von Ribbentrop was the foreign minister. 13 of them were sentenced to death by hanging. 7 of them were sentenced to life in prison or between 10 and 20 years. And 3 of them were acquitted. So when you look at the percent of Jews that were killed in the Holocaust, it is pretty astounding. You'll also actually see on the right, I want to point out, this is a Nazi propaganda picture. So some of the things that you can notice, if we know what propaganda is, that means that the Nazis would post biased pictures so that people would be on their side. So one of the things that I'm noticing is the nose. This is a stereotypical and very propaganda-like nose of a Jewish person. The second thing that I'm noticing is he's giving candy to these kids. And I think the intent behind the picture is to say that, hey, this is a creepy Jewish person, and we can assume that he's probably going to take these kids away, or at least that's what they want us to think when we look at this picture, because, you're not supposed to take candy from strangers, especially Jewish strangers. So this is an example of some Nazi propaganda. And we're going to look a little more at that in greater detail another day. So I just want to go down the line, and I want you to think about the numbers, and you have to record the numbers as I go, and you can pause me whenever you need to. So 88% of Jewish people in Poland were killed. 48% of the people, 48% of the Jewish people in the Soviet Union, 49% in Romania, 83% in Czechoslovakia, 83% in Germany, 50% in Hungary, Lithuania, 87%, 43% in France, 80% in Holland, 89% in Latvia, 87% in Yugoslavia, 80% in Greece, 67% in Austria, 40% in Belgium, and 26% in Italy. So out of 15, 12 of these countries had way more than 50%. So that's an incredible amount of people when you think about it. So most of these countries had half of their Jewish population killed just because the Nazis didn't like them. Okay, so some common questions. Why didn't the Jewish people just leave? People who were German Jews were fairly patriotic. 10,000 or more served for the German army in World War I, so they felt some kind of allegiance toward Germany. Jews lived in Germany, and they had been there for centuries, and they were used to things. They were assimilated, so they didn't feel the need to. Measures were taken against the Jews, and they were done gradually, so no one knew what was coming. They did it so slowly, and those who decided to leave had to find a country that would accept them. So a lot of places either reflected what the Nazis felt or were scared of what the Nazis would do, so they needed to find a country that would accept them legally to live in. Why didn't they fight back? There were resistance movements in every country that the Nazis occupied. They resisted in the ghettos, they resisted in the death camps, and they resisted in the concentration camps. But they didn't resist en masse. Why? So here's some of the things that the Nazis did to deter. So instead of getting a big group of people together, the Nazis had these strategies to kind of take that away from them. So they gave them little bits of hope. They let them know that bringing them to resettlement in the East might be better conditions than the ghetto, or they led them to believe that, but really they were taking them to the death or the extermination camps. They were deceived. There was a lack of information. Some people were in denial, and some people were in fear. And then the fact that when you feel as though somebody else is responsible for doing it, like we talked about in Terrible Things, then nothing gets done. Oh, somebody else will do it. Somebody else will do it. But then everybody passes that responsibility on and no one takes responsibility. And then all of a sudden, all of this has happened and nobody is fighting back. So, to review, the term the Holocaust is generally used to describe the genocide of approximately 6 million European Jews during World War II as part of a program of deliberate extermination planned and executed by Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler. In 1935, Hitler introduced the Nuremberg Laws, which stripped German Jews of their citizenship and deprived them of all civil rights. In his speech introducing the laws, Hitler said that if the Jewish problem cannot be solved by these laws, it must be handed over by law to the National Socialist Party for a final solution. Other groups were also persecuted and killed. This included ethnic Poles, the Romani, Soviet citizens, Soviet prisoners of war, the disabled, homosexual men, political and religious opponents. So it wasn't just the Jewish people. And the total number of victims of the Nazi genocide policies, including Poles, Romani, Soviet, POW, and the handicapped, is generally agreed to be between 9 and 11 million people. Okay, so that's it for your notes. If you need to go back at any point, you certainly may. If you've done them online, you should submit them when you're done. And if you've done them on paper, you need to pass them in when you're done. And we're going to work more with propaganda and timeline when I get back. Okay.